Hello, everyone. Good evening. So we have three people here that are essentially veterans of the blockchain crypto space. They've been there from the beginning fairly, and right now they've gone all the way from in their own VC fund or investing to creating their own companies to developing these social media organizations. And so we have three very diverse panelists tonight, and we'll go through their bios really quickly. So first we have Arianna Simpson, early stage investor and venture partner at Crystal Towers Capital with over 40 investments to date. And before she started investing, Arianna spent time in product and sales roles at BitGo and Facebook. She's a longtime investor in and advocate of cryptocurrencies and frequently speaks on tech-related topics. So thank you, Arianna. Appreciate having you here tonight. And then next, Jeff, the founder of a few social media organizations, Ethereuminvesting.info, Cryptocurrency Investing News, Cryptocurrency Investing, et cetera, et cetera. And then Jeff is following into some of the most active cryptocurrency groups online today. And he's also an accomplished entrepreneur, stock market analyst, investor in the equity, cryptocurrency space, and social media organizations. And he's recently joined the Cloud Project as a social media manager and article writer. And then lastly, Andrew Warshaver. He is a former competitive programmer, alumnus of Carnegie Mellon, and cryptocurrency enthusiast. He spent the last 2 years engineering products on Bitcoin and Ethereum, and more recently started trading cryptos full-time. So thank you, Jeff. I bypassed the thank you for you.
Thank you for having me.
And then Andrew as well. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, so we're going to kick it off. And again, we're very lucky to have this amazing panel here. We're going to kick it off by just hearing a little bit about how you got interested in crypto, and then we'll go into more actionable advice on how you, the audience, can actually find jobs and learn more about the jobs available in the crypto space. So let's jump in and let's go kind of in order and tell us when you found out about Bitcoin and what specifically about Bitcoin drew you to that space and kind of convinced you to dive right in.
Mm-hmm. Right, it looks like I'm on the left, so I'll give it a go. So yeah, when I actually found out about Bitcoin and been following it right around 2000s or like 2012 was when I really started following it. However, I wasn't really interested in investing or felt like it was something that was really going to be a global revolution in any way. It wasn't until Ethereum came around where I really got excited about cryptocurrency, because with Ethereum's ability to have smart contracts, I really felt like this is something that is actually going to change our world. It has literally limitless capabilities, and we're going to be able to remove middlemen. We're going to be able to kind of like unhinge banks. Like the possibilities for blockchain technology are amazing when you introduce smart contracts. So that's my background. As soon as I found out about Ethereum, I was all in from there.
Awesome. What about you, Arianna?
Totally different story. I basically had been working at a startup, running sales, did the classic like tech employee burnout, and spent a couple months traveling around Southern Africa to kind of recoup. And I spent some time in Zimbabwe, and I was there, after the worst of their hyperinflation, which at its peak was the second worst hyperinflation in the history of money. And the currency was devaluing by about half on a daily basis, which is completely insane. So I spent time traveling and, saw that they had switched to the dollar, had conversations with people who described to me basically the economic devastation that they had experienced following the currency's devaluation and basically, or hyperinflation. I came back and I was thinking a lot about, what might be solutions to this problem. And the founder now, he was still working on an unrelated project at the time, of Blockstack Labs, Ryan Shea, was a very good friend and neighbor of mine in New York City. And so he would come over and we'd, hang out and drink wine, and he was talking about this blockchain Bitcoin situation. And I was like, well, I really have no idea what you're saying, but I might as well dive in and see for myself. So I read the white paper and had this like kind of epiphany moment where I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like this could be a real solution to some of the problems that I saw in Zimbabwe, among many other things. And so I read the white paper and was pretty much obsessed from there. Started spending all of my time reading the developer docs, which was like a very weird thing for somebody who's not even an engineer to be doing. But I started doing a lot of writing and speaking about it just because I was so crazy about it. My friends nicknamed me Crypto Queen, and this was like 5 years ago. So everybody thought I was completely insane. Now, of course, I look a little bit less insane and a little bit more intelligent. But yeah, it's been pretty cool to see the evolution of the ecosystem, because when I first started buying was around when Bitcoin was maybe $100, something like that. And you know, I put like pretty much all my money into it, and yeah, it seemed like a very questionable idea at the time. Looks much better in hindsight, so we'll see where we go from here.
Awesome.
Cool. I actually got into Bitcoin when I was researching conspiracy theory, which is known as the petrodollar system. And that has lots of ties into like the Federal Reserve and central banking. And so, you know, I ended up spending a bit of time learning about how that works, and more about Austrian economics and stuff, because they really only teach you Keynesian economics in school. And so with all of that, then, you know, people around me started mentioning Bitcoin as a possible alternative to a monetary system. And once I started learning about sound money, you know, I was instantly hooked. And then, you know, that was about summer of 2015. And so, you know, the first thing I did was like, all right, I need to go find a job in Bitcoin and crypto land, you know, to figure this stuff out. And then, you know, here I am.
So it feels like all of you, of course, given that this space is so new, you came from either a prior profession or prior interests. So what skills would you say are specific to the crypto space that you guys had to develop over the past few years?
Yeah, I'd say for sure the willingness to learn and the open mind to be able to accept new ideas and new concepts. You know, I feel a lot of people are rooted in the idea of the way that our world should be working, that we're trusting centralized banks or centralized things, whether it's like Uber or Spotify, to direct where our money goes. And I think that's a major shift that needs to happen in psychology. So I think the biggest skill is being open to change, would be my opinion on that.
Awesome. What about you guys?
You know, I would mostly echo the same thing. Like, it's all about learning new things because blockchain is uncharted territory for a lot of us. I would add, you know, game theory as an emerging and valuable, you know, skill, just because the economic systems of so many blockchains rely on, you know, competitive / cooperative type of schemes. So if you have a background in game theory or get the chance to study it, now would be a very valuable time.
Yeah, totally. And what about you, Arianna? What type of skills did you have to kind of develop as you dove into the Bitcoin space?
I mean, I think a lot of it was just like sitting down and reading stuff that didn't make a lot of sense until it made sense. I think, you know, crypto is such a weird combination of like economics and cryptography and math and, you know, systems thinking and, you know, all of these various pieces that come together. And so I think it's, there wasn't really necessarily one thing. It was just a lot of like me sitting there with tabs upon tabs until finally I had like these moments of illumination. It was kind of similar actually to like reading Kant or philosophy in college, where you'd have these sentences that like, you're like, literally what? And then you just read it 5 times and then all of a sudden you're like, aha, I get it. So yeah, that was pretty much my experience. And I think one thing that, you know, I encourage people to do as they're diving into the space is just like stick with it and until it starts to make some sense. Because I think a lot of people come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, like how did you become an expert? Blah, blah. And I'm like, literally, it's not very glamorous. I just sat there and read stuff until some of it made sense. And, you know, I think honestly, that's the only way to do this. That and like talking to people who are knowledgeable about the space.
And cryptocurrencies have become very like mainstream now. So there's a lot of tutorials and guides online where you could go, and if you don't like sitting at home and reading a white paper, then you could probably find a video on YouTube. And there's so many kind of ways to learn and educate yourself in this space. So I just wanted to welcome, I noticed that more people started tuning in. So just wanted to welcome everyone today we're having a panel on cryptocurrencies and blockchain, how you can get started with it, and also explore job opportunities in these awesome new emerging companies. So for everyone who just tuned in, we're about to kind of finish off the high-level overview of cryptocurrencies and then jump into more actionable stuff on like what's it like to work at a Bitcoin startup. But before we do that, can one of you just describe to folks like what Bitcoin is and how does it work as a currency?
I like to, very briefly, I tell people Bitcoin is gold, but designed for the internet. Mm-hmm. It follows very similar properties. They're both bearer assets, which means the person who holds it in real life owns it. They both are deflationary, and they both have a mining process that secures the network. So the corollary for me is very strong there, and I think that helps a lot of people to understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. And the way that I like to explain it is that it's essentially just a big shared like Microsoft Excel spreadsheet where people can see what units are being transferred across. And so everyone holds a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet and it's all the exact same one. And when one change happens on one, it happens instantaneously on all the other spreadsheets. So this creates a really transparent way so that everybody can see how much quote unquote digital gold everybody actually has. So there's no way to sweep transactions under the rug. Everything is 100% transparent.
Awesome. Yeah, and I actually went to a talk yesterday on the blockchain, and something that really stuck out to me was the decentralized nature of the cryptocurrencies, that there's no one central point of failure, that there's no central bank, there's no government. It's basically people that participate in the network, and all the information is stored on each other's on your own computer, and then you contribute your processing power to the network. So even if the government wanted to shut down Bitcoin, they could only maybe do a handful of computers, but there's computers all over the world that are running blockchain. And that's why that's the beauty of Bitcoin, is that it's a true digital currency with no centralized authority. So you guys been following this space for a while, and Arianna, you've invested in a lot of cool crypto startups. So can you guys tell us a little bit about more the application of the blockchain and application of cryptocurrencies to the real world, and what are some problems that these companies are trying to solve?
Yeah, so for me, go for it, Arianna. Go ahead.
Yeah, Arianna.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think one of the, there are so many different applications that it's kind of hard to know where to start. But, one area that's been talked a lot about is remittances and kind of international money transfers. So, that's a huge one. The whole concept of providing financial services to the billions of people who are not serviced by the traditional banking infrastructure is another. Especially in areas like much of Africa where people have smartphones, but they don't necessarily have bank accounts. The ability for the unbanked to bank themselves is definitely one of the areas of promise. But it could go anywhere to insurance tech, where, there's an advantage to having a blockchain involved. There are applications that could be in all sorts of industries. I think right now there's kind of this marketing mania around the word blockchain, which I personally find hilarious, because it's take an existing company and just append the word blockchain and all of a sudden your valuation 10x's, which clearly is not really logical. And I think oftentimes when I'm talking to folks who are saying, oh, we want to do an ICO, or we want to, put our X on the blockchain. And I'm like, cool, well, why? It's not something that you need to just paste on any sort of business. There are certain cases in which it does have a meaningful effect and improvement, but in many cases it doesn't. So I think being a little bit discerning about the use cases where it's actually needed and where it's not is also important.
So as somebody that's a novice within blockchain and cryptocurrencies, how do you separate the signal from the noise and realize what's credible, what's non-credible? What are some questions to ask or resources to use to really decide for a company you're trying to work for or somebody that you're trying to do business with in that space?
Was that for me or somebody else?
I can pick it up, I guess. So yeah, what I like to do is, well, first of all, what's important to any project is the team behind it and then the track record they have. You're going to want to be investing in projects that have team members who have proven track records. If another resource that I really love to use is the magic of the internet, because chances are if you're looking for it, so has somebody else, and so are a lot of other people who have already done some deep research into it. So tools like Reddit are a really good one where you can check out that specific project subreddit and see what people are saying about it, see what the general public sentiment is. But of course, take it with a grain of salt, because there are a lot of ICOs that are running on solely hype. So type in the cryptocurrency, type in the word scam. It's just like Arianna touched upon before, it's just pretty much sitting in front of the computer for an insane amount of time and reading until you find the thing you're looking for. Reddit, Facebook groups, and going through the team and reading through the white paper is really the biggest thing as well. That's a little more for the intermediate level, but to have a read through all white papers, I think, is crucial before you invest in anything.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so kind of moving on to the actual like startups. So there's Bitcoin startups, there's ICOs, which are initial coin offerings. So for you guys who, Arianna, you've invested in these startups. Andrew, you're starting you worked as an engineer for these startups. What is it like to work for these companies, and what are the similarities and differences between crypto startups and regular startups?
It's exciting for sure. Like, everyone's kind of watching the Bitcoin and other altcoin price on a daily basis, which, when you're a newcomer to the space, adds quite a bit of excitement, although, after a year or two, you kind of just become immune to it.
Mm-hmm.
But, I wouldn't say it's, that different from your other jobs. Even I was working on, a multi-sig smart contract on Bitcoin, but still 95% of the work I was doing was web development, back-end systems, bug fixes. Only 5% was really core blockchain work. Now that was the most exciting part, and that's why I signed up, was to get that experience.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't expect expect a lot of your skills to transfer over as well, so you can get ramped up quickly while learning from those around you as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point that just because they're in the crypto space or blockchain or Bitcoin, and a lot of these concepts seem very complex, the day-to-day, they still need operations folks, they still need web developers, they still need designers, product managers, maybe even business development guys. So don't be intimidated by a startup that maybe is in the Bitcoin space, because they're definitely looking for talent with traditional skill sets. And for you, Arianna, like you've seen a lot of startups, and especially Bitcoin startups. Kind of what sticks out to you as the main differences and similarities?
Well, I actually think that one of the challenges that faces the industry now is that I think there's a lot of good technical talent, but there's very few actually good like product people, designers, people like that. And I think this is kind of a big issue, because right now we have, everyone's focused on like, is this technically feasible? Which obviously is important, but like, it also needs to be usable. And, I don't think you should need to like be an expert in cryptography in order to use a particular wallet. Like, this is nonsense. If crypto is going to go mainstream, you need to have the ability for like normal people to use it. And right now, most of the apps and things that exist are like really pretty horrible. So I actually encourage people who have different skill sets to come into the industry, because I think we need it. Like right now, it's like I actually think great designers would in some ways be more useful than like yet another person building a protocol, because while obviously we need the protocols, we also need usable things built on the blockchain, because otherwise, like, what are we doing? And so I absolutely think that if you have a particular skill set or area of expertise, whether that be marketing or product design or whatever, like by all means, please come. We definitely need you.
Gotcha. What would you say is the biggest deficit people that don't necessarily have that blockchain background but want to break into this space? What is something that many people, what is one key thing that they don't have from what you've seen so far?
Well, I mean, I think the challenge is just that, like, you're going to hear all these words thrown about and you have no real idea what they're talking about. And so it takes a little bit of time to, like, kind of get up to speed in that regard. But, you know, I think it's the same thing. Like, if you were to dive into the healthcare industry, like, I do a lot of healthcare investing, and it's like MIPS and MACRA and this AC, you know, like, there's tons of words and acronyms and stuff like that being thrown around. So I think there's some degree of barrier to entry to any industry. I think it's perhaps higher here just because it is a very technical industry and one that's still in its infancy. But I actually think that's also what makes it a great opportunity. Like, you know, honestly, 5 years ago, I was very quickly able to go from, like, I know nothing about crypto because Bitcoin was just created, to, like, speaking at all the major conferences, because, like, in a new industry, you don't have to have, like, 20 years of experience to be an expert, because nobody has 20 years of experience. So I actually think, like, if you want to put in the time and do the research and talk to people, and put in some effort, like, it's really a great opportunity, especially if you're, you know, young and hungry.
Totally. And that's actually a great point for the Breaking into Startups community members. And a lot of you are hungry to break into tech, to learn new skills, to work on something challenging. And I find that cryptocurrencies and the crypto space kind of embodies a lot of those factors. And if you're someone who maybe has a year of design experience, but you have the vision, you have the desire to learn, from what I hear, like, these smaller, like, crypto startups are more likely to take a chance on you and even, like, give you a shot, and then maybe you could start as a contractor or just work on a side project. And then if you prove yourself, they're more likely to bring you on full time. That's actually something kind of I also wanted to get your opinions on, is, like, what are the advantages of working for crypto companies? So there's a recent AngelList article that talks about some of the benefits. Like, for example, there's more remote roles available, so people don't have to be located in the same office. A lot of them are distributed teams, so it gives people an opportunity to work with other people from around the world. Employee liquidity, basically, like, kind of how if you work for a traditional startup, you need to wait for a liquidity event, like a acquisition or sale. With crypto and Bitcoin startups, the liquidity event sometimes could occur a lot sooner. So there's a bunch of factors. From your perspective, what do you see as the biggest benefits working in the crypto space?
So one of the big benefits too, on top of, you know, remote working being, you know, very prevalent in crypto, is that also means you generally set your own schedule. You know, you might have a catch-up meeting once a day, but if you prefer to code at night or, you know, at odd hours, like a lot of coders do, you know, that can accommodate you.
Awesome. What about Arianna and Jeff? What are some of the benefits you guys see in working for crypto startups?
Well, I think the main thing is that, you know, you are still early into an industry, which personally I think is going to be massive. And so, you know, like I said, you have the ability to, like, become known as, like, the expert in this thing. It's like, you know, if you see things early, like, sure, there's more risk, but there's also more upside. And so if you can position yourself as, like, a really great blockchain engineer, or, like, a really great, you know, person in the space, you know, append whatever your skill set is to that. But I think it's a huge opportunity. So I would say that's probably the main thing, because then, I mean, you'll have infinite options. Like, you'll have job opportunities in the actual, like, new companies that are being created, but also in, like, traditional players who are going to need to build out teams to deal with, like, crypto related stuff. So, I mean, I think you'll effectively have infinite job security and also potentially make a lot of money.
Yeah. I feel like what they just talked about, they absolutely nailed it. And something that I feel is great too is if you're working for crypto, you're probably getting paid in Bitcoin or Ethereum. So if you drag that out on a 5-year scale, and we're expecting, if the blockchain industry does what we're expecting it to do, you know, you're making 10x on whatever you're making right now. So that $50 an hour just turned into 500. So that's a nice little added bonus as well.
Speaking of salaries, so I've heard that a lot of employees at Bitcoin and Ethereum startups get paid in the Bitcoins. So how does that work? Like, is your annual salary like agreed upon in the beginning of the year? In like, you're gonna get 100,000 Bitcoins, or just an example. But like, how does that work? Or is it more like you're assigned 100,000 a year, and then every month you get paid like that portion in Bitcoin? Like, just curious, like for people tuning in.
Yeah, it's definitely more diverse than the standard 9-to-5 job or jobs that are paid in fiat currency, because it's really malleable to however you want to get paid. Some projects just pay tokens right up front, or they pay tokens for different things. Like, you can do even just, if you're not working for a company, like a bounty program, for example. It's like every time you share something on Facebook, you get 500 of this token, or every time you do this action, you get this thing. And as smart contracts become more common and easier to use, the payment in cryptocurrencies become infinitely better. So now it's like, when you do this, then you get this. There's even an ICO right now going on for Etch, and they're running payroll on the blockchain. So you get paid per second that you're at work, and everything is just funneled out through your workday. So you don't have to wait until, week 2 to get paid. As soon as you go to work, you start getting paid on minute 1. So it's really cool, because now you can get paid for essentially, you can buy your lunch with what you just worked for that day. So it's very cool. I love it.
Nice.
There's kind of a funny anecdote on this front, because Coinbase's first employee, Olaf, tried to negotiate with Brian Armstrong, the CEO, to be paid in Bitcoin. And he was willing to take a 50% pay cut in order to do that. And he's like, yeah, ultimately, it's probably a good thing that it didn't work out, because I would have bankrupted the company. So he wanted a set number of Bitcoins, per month or per week or per year or whatever, which at the time, of course, was like, I don't know, maybe $50 a Bitcoin, 20. And now, obviously, that would be an insane number. So typically what companies will do is denominate the person's salary in like USD and then pay them that amount in cryptocurrency, because otherwise, like, if you consider an appreciation, you can hire somebody making like $50,000 a year, and at the end of the year they're making $500,000, which might be a little bit difficult for the company to manage from a cash flow perspective. In my case, personally, when I worked at BitGo, I was paid in dollars, but my bonus was paid in Bitcoin. So, kind of a blend.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then I know that a bunch of newcomers in this space, they're worried about potential regulatory impact. So what is your perspective on the government and what they may do in the crypto space, and how they may potentially change any trends in the industry?
I think that's actually one of the biggest risks that, people don't talk about that much in crypto. Jamie Dimon's been in the news a lot lately, he's sounding kind of foolish, but he does repeatedly say one thing consistently, which is governments will try and crush Bitcoin. And to an extent, he could be right. A cryptocurrency like Bitcoin will remove the power of the government to do taxation, right? And that's, their bread and butter about how they survive. So, we have to think about what will government look like, with cryptocurrency widespread. But the other thing is, it's designed to survive something like that. One of the big things that a lot of people in the crypto communities like is that it, is resilient against such attacks. So, we'll see what happens. But for now, I think governments will try and play nice, because, if you don't, you kind of ostracize a lot of great entrepreneurs. And so you'd have people going to Japan, where it's been declared legal tender, and Switzerland, where they're very friendly, instead of staying here and opening countries here. And at the end of the day, I don't think the government wants that. So we'll see how it unfolds.
No, for sure. And just to remind people that we're here chatting about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies today, how people could get started in the space, and also what type of jobs are available. If you're interested, comment crypto on the Facebook Live video, and we'll send you a 30-page startup guide. And for you guys, so there's a lot of folks who want to learn more about the space. Who are some of the people that you look up to in the space, and what resources would you recommend for novices?
Yeah, YouTube is a phenomenal resource to use. And if you're looking for just quick snippets that combine news along with technical information that's still relatively easy to follow, Ivan on Tech is a phenomenal guy to check out on YouTube. And then if you're just looking for, okay, what happened today in crypto news, all encompassing, it's a Crypt Zero. So it's like crypto with a zero is also really good on YouTube as well. And there's quite a few different people on YouTube, but those are the two that I find really lay it out well.
Awesome. What about you?
I would go with Andreas Antonopoulos. He's my favorite, technical guy. He wrote kind of like the book on Bitcoin called Mastering Bitcoin, which is, it's a technical book, but it's also relatively accessible. If you want to know how Bitcoin works underneath the hood, it's great. And I mean, for news and stuff, I mostly rely on Reddit just to keep up to date with everything.
Awesome. And you, Arianna, what resources would you recommend for people to stay on top of the news and learn more?
I read a lot of stuff from Twitter, so I follow a lot of like kind of industry people who I think are smart and retweet or read interesting things. I try not to get too caught up in like the day-to-day news stuff. I think that's just kind of like a lot of it is just like, and the price is up and the price is down and like blah, and I think a lot of that's not really valuable. I read somewhere that one of the founders of Renaissance Technologies deliberately read the news 2 weeks post fact so that he wasn't like too conditioned by day-to-day stuff. And I thought that was really interesting, and I've kind of adopted that a little bit myself. So I kind of track things at a high level, but I'm more interested in like, what are some of the developments that are coming out on the technical side rather than like what's today's news. Also because like, for example, you could say, oh no, China is like banning Bitcoin, help, panic sell. And then like the price drops by $2,000 and then like 2 weeks later it's back up. So, I think too much of that noise just kind of makes you anxious and can make you lose sight of kind of the long-term picture. So I try not to get too in the weeds on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, there's one thing that's for sure is that there's so much like crypto news in 1,001 places, and it's hard to really get a lead on things like, Reddit. It's even tough to sift through Reddit, and you don't want to sit through a half-an-hour YouTube video. And Twitter, like Twitter is great, but you're scrolling, and so I found like that's one of the reasons why I created the 2 social media groups, and then the ICO that I'm working on right now is actually aiming to solve this exact issue. It's Clout, and so what it's going to do is congregate all of the crypto news, media, and information onto one place. And the way that the high quality information rises to the top is if you make a post and it gets upvoted, you get paid. If you upvote and then somebody upvotes after you, you also get paid. And if you downvote and somebody downvotes after you, you also get paid. So it's incentivizing for the good quality to rise to the top quickly so that it's relevant news really fast, and for the bad post to just kind of make it into the abyss. So we're definitely looking to solve this issue.
Yeah, and kind of this year specifically, there's been a lot of talk about ICOs, and we're definitely going to have a panel on ICOs at some point in the next few months. But for people tuning in, if you follow the news, I feel like there's 2 categories. There's the Bitcoin blockchain startups, and then there's ICOs. So for people tuning in, what are ICOs, and then what should people be considering when they're evaluating jobs at these companies?
So an ICO is sort of like the crypto version of an IPO, except it occurs much earlier in the state of a company. An IPO would be, 5-10 years into the company's existence, and it goes public on the NYSE. With an ICO, they're, accelerating that timetable and doing a crowd fund from the start instead of traditional VC funding. And then they use the funds from that to fund development for the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully. What was your other question?
So kind of what should people consider when they're evaluating joining an ICO in various roles?
So one thing you might want to look for is job security. If the ICO brought in a lot of money, then you would probably have high job security. But if they haven't launched the ICO yet, you might have more upside, but it might just flame out in a couple months.
Totally. And what about you, Jeff? Since you're working on your own ICO and you're obviously an employee there or like founder as well. So kind of what are some words of advice for people considering jumping into the crypto space and specifically joining an ICO?
Yeah, well, my advice for sure would be to get on something that you believe has future potential and something that excites you. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that you have to lose is just your time. So if you're putting your heart and soul into something that you believe in and you know the team, they're solid, you see the direction, you're in the inner working, so you know what's happening, you can pull out at any time. And then coupled with that, get something in writing, obviously. Have a lawyer draft up a contract and have something in writing like, okay, on this day, I'm getting this many tokens. Just be formal about it and don't have any expectations. I think that's just it. Just go with because you're wanting to do this. Go with a project you like because there's so much to choose from out there right now. It's amazing.
Where can people see all the upcoming ICOs?
Oh, there's about 1,001 ICO sites. Like one would be ICO Alert. Just look up upcoming ICO on Google and you'll see about 50 different web pages dedicated to this. And you can just scroll through all of them, check out the projects, and just dial into whichever one you want. And my suggestion onto contacting people in that ICO is not to email, but to actually go into their Slack or their Telegram group and message the founders directly, because generally they're there and they're answering all the questions, and they're generally really personal people as well.
Awesome. That's great advice. So everyone listening, check out the Slacks. And what was the other platform you said?
Telegram.
Telegram. And you'll be able to speak to the employees, founders, and connect with them, which is the most important step in the break-in process. And then from there, you could decide whether you want to join the team or not. So I think we're about to wrap up. But before we do so, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you or follow you on social media?
For myself, it would be through my two cryptocurrency groups. One is Cryptocurrency Investing, super easy to find, or Ethereum Investing. And if you want to get in touch with me personally, it just says I'm the admin. There's my picture right there, Jeff Kirdeikis. So just click on it, shoot me a message, and I'm always happy to talk.
Awesome.
Twitter for me, it's just Arianna Simpson is my handle.
Awesome. Yeah. And I checked out your Twitter before the panel, and you have a lot of awesome tweets and posts that you're sharing. So if you want to stay on top of news, definitely check out Arianna's feed. And how about you, Andrew?
Twitter for me as well. The handle's Battle Clipper.
Awesome.
Awesome.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate your insight.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Oh, they just popped right off.
Yeah, I just, yeah, so